ash falls like black snow on the Pelennor, stinging every eye it touches. The wind tastes of iron and burned wheat. Men choke on smoke that does not come from Mordor alone. From the eastern road, a new sound rolls closer than thunder. Drums in strange measures, horns that do not call to Gondor, and a marching that never breaks stride. The gate of Minas Tirith stands open, and beyond it, in the grey light, two cloaked figures lift their hands, as if the world itself is a weapon. If you enjoy these deep-dive Middle-earth timelines, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps more than you think. And tell me in the comments where you are listening from, and which single Tolkien. What if you would make into a full alternate history? The cloaked figures do not look toward the city. They look past it, toward the far black line of Ethel Duath, as if they are measuring a shadow that has long been personal. Their robes are the color of stormwater. Their faces are hidden. Yet their voices carry, quiet, steady, cutting through panic like a blade through cloth. Hold. On the walls, Gondorian soldiers, bleeding, sleepless, half-mad from siege and terror, hesitate. A captain with soot on his cheeks lowers his bow by inches, because something in that single word feels older than fear. On the fields, the first rank of the newcomers stops with perfect discipline. Not orcs, not Haradrim in serpent helms. Men, thousands upon thousands, with lamellar armor that glints like fish scales, their banners stitched with runes no man of the West can read. Among them walk Easterling priests, their faces painted with ash, and behind them roll wagons bearing casks of oil and racks of arrows with black heads. The city has fought Mordor and lived. Now it stares into a second war arriving late, like an afterthought of doom. Far away, at the very edge of the world's remembered maps, Sauron pauses atop Barad-dûr. The eye turns, not west, but east, as if something has finally moved that he had assumed was dead. And in a small chamber of Minas Tirith, Gandalf feels it too. A presence like cold water poured down the spine. Not the enemy's will. Another will, older, fiercely, bitterly familiar. He whispers a name he has not spoken in centuries, and his voice cracks on it. LOTR, Pelennor. The divergence begins long before ash falls on the Pelennor. It begins with a choice made in darkness under alien stars. When two Istari, sent to hinder Sauron's dominion, refuse to be diminished by distance. They travel beyond Rhûn, beyond Dorwinian's wine-dark waters, beyond the Sea of Nirn's poisonous humidity. They go into lands where the very language feels like a trap, where men bow to spirits in the wind and call the Dark Lord by titles the West has never heard. In the tales of the wise, the blue wizards vanish. Some say they fail, some say they forget, some say they establish cults and make the East worse. In this timeline, they return with armies. And the world is not ready to decide whether that is salvation or a second ruin. On the night of the Council of Elrond, as the ring lies on the table like a dropped piece of night, there is a moment, small, almost laughable, when Elrond's ear tilts toward the open window. The sound is nothing, a hush, a pressure in the air. A raven lands on the sill, feathers damp with mountain mist. It does not croak, it stares. Its eyes are too aware. Elrond lifts his hand. Speak. The raven's beak opens, and a voice comes out that is not a bird's. It is deep, resonant, speaking in Westron with an accent that tastes like sand and salt. Tell the Peridhel to look east. Tell Mithrandir to remember the last star he saw over Rhûn. Boromir's hand goes to his sword. Legolas' eyes narrow. Gimli shifts, sniffing for sorcery. Aragorn leans forward, not threatening, but alert, like a wolf hearing a second pack. Gandalf rises so fast, his chair scrapes stone. He stares at the raven as if it is a ghost wearing feathers. Who speaks? The raven's head cocks, and for a heartbeat, something like sorrow moves through that borrowed gaze. Two who were sent and did not abandon their errand, the voice says. Sauron gathers the east gathers itself. The blue flame has not gone out. Then the raven collapses, dead as a stone. Silence sits heavy in the room, and for once even the ring's whisper seems far away. Elrond's face is calm, but his eyes are not. There are two more of your order. Gandalf does not answer at once. He looks at the dead bird, at the thin line of blood at its beak. There were, he says, and perhaps there still are. In the days after, as the Fellowship prepares, Gandalf takes Aragorn aside under the pines. Long have I feared that our war would be fought on one front, while another front moved unseen, Gandalf says. LOTR and Pelennor went east in the Second Age. They were to stir resistance, to undermine cults, to do what I have done here, only in lands where my name has no weight. Aragorn watches him closely. And did they? Gandalf's mouth tightens. No tale returns from beyond Rune that can be trusted. Only rumors, blue fires on far hills, wars that begin and end in a season, kings found dead with no wound. Temples burned from within. They might have failed, or they might have succeeded too well. Aragorn's gaze flicks toward the west, where the sun sets like a wound. What does the message mean? It means, Gandalf says, voice low, that the east is moving. And if they are truly alive, they have chosen to move with it. A seed is planted in the viewer's mind. Are the blue wizards allies or rivals? That question will not be answered quickly. It will be answered in fire and in oaths broken beneath foreign banners. The Fellowship leaves Rivendell. The story still follows the known road, Caradhras, Moria, Lorien, but the sky feels subtly changed. Ravens gather in more numbers than they should. Once, in the high snow, Boromir wakes shivering from a dream in which two blue torches burn at the edge of his vision, and a voice says, Gondor will kneel twice. He does not tell the others. Pride keeps it in his throat like a stone. In Moria, when the Balrog comes, there is a moment, too fast to be understood in the original tale, when the creature recoils, not from Glamdring, not from Gandalf's staff, but from a faint blue shimmer that flickers along the wizard's sleeve as he raises his hand. Gandalf does not notice, or if he does, he refuses to. On the bridge of Khazad-dûm, as he faces shadow and flame, Gandalf's eyes flash with memory, not of the Shire, not of fireworks and laughter. Memory of a far desert temple where he once argued with LOTR, voices echoing off stone. You cannot rouse men by gentleness alone, LOTR had said, eyes bright like stormlights. You must give them something to fear more than Sauron. And what will you give them? Gandalf had asked. LOTR's smile had been thin, hope armed with teeth. Now, as the Balrog falls and Gandalf falls with it, the last thing he hears is not the demon's roar. It is a distant drumbeat, faint as a heartbeat, coming from the east. The Fellowship breaks. The ring-bearer goes toward Mordor. The War of the West gathers in Rohan and Gondor, and beyond the Ash Mountains, beyond the Sea of Rune. The blue wizards gather what they have forged over centuries, a coalition of eastern peoples who have been living under Sauron's shadow. So long, they have forgotten the feel of a true dawn. LOTR and Pelennor do not rule like kings. They do not sit on thrones. They move through camps at night, faces hidden, speaking to chieftains and priestesses, to mercenary captains and horse lords of the steppe, to farmers whose children have been taken by black riders. They speak in many tongues. They speak in the language of hunger, of humiliation, of blood debt. They promise that Sauron can be broken. They do not promise that the West will treat the East as anything but conquered once the war is won. That is where their power lies. In one camp, a woman named Cirith, captain of a spear company from the shores of the Sea of Rhûn, kneels before LOTR. Her armor is patched, her hands scarred from years of fighting Sauron's tax collectors. "You ask us to die for Gondor," she says. Her voice is flat as an unsheathed knife. "Gondor does not even know our names." LOTR crouches, bringing his hidden face near hers. His breath smells like rain. "You will not die for Gondor," he says. "You will die for your own children, for the right to speak your own prayers, for the right to bury your dead without the eye's permission." Cirith's eyes narrow. "And afterward, LOTR says, "you will not kneel." She laughs once, sharp and unbelieving. No one wins, and then leaves power lying in the dust. Pelennor steps from shadow behind LOTR, voice quieter, more dangerous for its calm. "Then you will have watched the wrong kind of man rule you." Cirith looks between them. "Are you men?" "Not as you mean it," LOTR answers. She stands. "Then swear by what you are." LOTR pauses, a single heartbeat where the world seems to listen. "I swear," he says, "by the flame imperishable." The words are old. They do not belong in this camp. They carry weight like mountains. Cirith bows her head, once. "Then I will bring you 500 spears, one thread." Another thread runs west, where Denethor, steward of Gondor, feels his control slipping like sand through clenched fingers. He has lost Osgiliath. He has lost Boromir. He watches the Palantir and sees ships with black sails and fires on the Anduin. In this timeline, Denethor also sees something else. A vast host moving from the east, not toward Mordor, but toward Gondor. He sees banners he does not recognize. He sees two figures moving at the head, like shadows cast by twin moons. The Palantir burns his hands cold. He jerks away, heart pounding, and whispers to the empty room, "Another army, another war, another betrayal." He calls for Faramir. When Faramir enters, Denethor's eyes are bloodshot. "You have been in Ithilien. You have seen the Haradrim. You have heard the tongues of the south. Tell me, son of mine, do the Eastlings march also?" Faramir hesitates. He has heard rumors. He has seen strange smoke signals on far hills. He has found dead orcs with blue marks burned into their foreheads, like a brand. "I have heard of unrest," he says carefully, "but not of armies." Denethor's laugh is hollow. "You have heard what you can bear. There is worse coming. There is always worse coming." Faramir steps forward, voice gentle. "Father, if another host comes, then perhaps it comes against Sauron." Denethor's gaze snaps. "Against Sauron, and then against us. Men do not bring armies across the world out of love. They bring them to take. Remember it." Faramir says nothing, but his eyes darken. He loves his father, but he feels the rot in the steward's certainty. It is a rot fed by despair and pride. A third thread runs in the dark itself. In Mordor, Sauron senses a problem in the east. Not rebellion. Rebellion he can crush. Something else. A resistance that does not break when he punishes it. A resistance that anticipates his moves, that strikes at supply lines and cult centers, that kills his emissaries and leaves their bodies arranged in symbols older than his own. He calls one of the Nazgûl, the shadow of Khamûl, the Easterling. "Ride," Sauron commands, voice like a furnace. "Ride east. Find the source of this blue fire. Burn it." Khamûl bows, but something in him trembles. He was once of the East. The East remembers him. He fears what will remember him now. As the Black Rider departs, Sauron's eye turns again west, where the ring moves closer. He thinks he can fight on two fronts. He has always fought on many. He does not yet understand that the blue wizards have learned the one tactic that can wound a god, to make his servants choose. The first turning point comes not at Helm's Deep, but in the plains beyond the Sea of Rhûn. Khamûl finds a battlefield where no battle should have happened. Hundreds of orcs lie dead, throats cut, bodies burned in patterns that form a circle. In the center stands a single stake. On it is nailed a scrap of blue cloth. Khamûl dismounts, sword drawn. The air smells of wet stone, though there is no rain. The horses scream and refuse to step forward. A voice comes from behind him. "You wear a crown of fear." Khamûl whirls. He sees two figures at the edge of his vision, there and not there. Their cloaks ripple though there is no wind. "I am fear," Khamûl hisses. "I am the voice that makes kings obey." "Once," Pelennor says softly, "you were a man who loved sunlight." Khamûl's sword shakes. Memory is poison to a wraith. LOTR steps forward. He does not lift his staff. He lifts his hand, palm up, as if offering something. "Come back," he says. "Not to us, to yourself." Khamûl laughs, and it is the sound of metal scraping bone. There is no self. There is only the Lord. LOTR's hand closes slowly, as if crushing an invisible coal. Blue flame flickers between his fingers. "Then feel this," he says. The flame leaps. It does not burn flesh. It burns the binding. For a moment, one breathtaking moment, Khamûl's form flickers. A face appears beneath the hood, brown-skinned, scarred, eyes full of terror. He screams, not in rage, in grief. Then the binding snaps back like a chain, and the wraith stumbles, retreating, dragging itself away from the circle of dead orcs. He flees eastward, not toward Mordor, but away from these two who remember what he was. In Barad-dûr, Sauron feels the scream through the link that ties all Nazgûl. For the first time in an age, something like alarm touches him. His servants can be unmade. The second turning point strikes the west with a different blade. At Helm's Deep, the battle rages as it always does. Rain, ladders, Uruk-hai chanting. But in the far hills beyond the deeping wall, watchers see strange lights. Blue sparks moving like fireflies across the dark slopes. Aragorn, fighting atop the wall, catches a glimpse between sword strokes. For a moment, the storm clears, and on the horizon he sees a line of torches, not heading toward Helm's Deep, but away, eastward, like a signal chain. He feels a chill. Not because of Saruman's army, because of what those lights might mean. That someone far away is moving pieces in a game that even Gandalf does not control. When Gandalf returns with Éomer at dawn, victory comes, but it feels less like triumph and more like being granted a single breath. Gandalf rides into the aftermath and looks toward the east. His eyes are bright, troubled. Legolas speaks quietly, wiping his blade. "Do you see it?" "Yes," Gandalf says. "They are awake, friend?" Aragorn asks. Gandalf's answer is honest, and that honesty is a knife. "I do not know." The audience feels the first real dread. Even the guide is uncertain now. As Rohan rides to Gondor, another perspective thread follows Merry and Pippin. But even their path bends. Fangorn's shadows deepen. Treebeard mutters not only of Saruman's treachery, but of blue voices that once sang to the Entwives in far gardens east of the Brownlands. They said they would find them, Treebeard rumbles. They said they would bring back green. Long have I waited. Long, long. When Isengard falls, Saruman in his tower laughs with bitterness. He leans out, hair wild, and calls down to Gandalf and the others. You think your little victory matters? The East moves. The old powers stir. Even your masters do not know what they have loosed. Gandalf's jaw tightens. Speak plainly. Saruman's eyes gleam. I saw them, Mithrandir, in the Seeing Stone. Two in blue, crowned in smoke, leading men who do not bow to the west or the dark. They are not yours. He spits the last word like a curse, and for a moment, even Theoden, brave, newly unshackled, looks uneasy. The third turning point comes at the River Anduin. Boromir is dead in the original tale, and he remains dead here. But his death changes shape, not only because of his fall, but because of what Denethor receives. A boat arrives at Minas Tirith bearing Boromir's broken horn as always. Yet tied to it is another thing, a strip of blue cloth, wet and stained, knotted around the horn's mouthpiece. Faramir sees it first. His throat tightens. He touches it as if it might bite. Denethor's fingers close around the cloth, and he freezes. The Palantir had shown him blue. Now the world puts blue in his hands. He lifts the horn, and for a heartbeat, he hears, not in his ears, but in his mind, Boromir's voice, distant as a dream. Do not trust the blue fire. Denethor's face goes pale, then hardens into rage. Witchcraft, he whispers. He orders spies sent to the eastern borders, to Caer Andros, to the ruins of Osgiliath, to every road where a foreign boot might step. His paranoia becomes policy, and policy becomes blood. In Ithilien, Faramir captures Frodo and Sam as before. He sees the rings pull and resists it. Yet when he looks at Frodo, he sees something else in the halfling's eyes. Exhaustion laced with a strange hope, Faramir asks softly, when the others sleep and the waterfall sings its endless song. Tell me, what do you carry truly? Frodo hesitates, then says, a burden that the West cannot bear alone. Faramir's gaze sharpens. Then why does the West bear it at all? Frodo looks down at his hands. He has no answer that feels clean. Sam, half awake, mutters, because someone has to. Faramir studies them. He thinks of his father's fear of the East. He thinks of Gondor's pride. He thinks of the faces of dead Haradrim in Ithilien, men who died far from home because someone else told them they must. He says very quietly, if the East rose against Sauron, would you trust them? Frodo looks up, startled. He hears a question beneath the question. Would the West even allow the East to be free? I would trust anyone who hated the Shadow enough to fight it, Frodo says. Faramir nods, but his expression remains troubled. He knows hatred can build kingdoms as easily as it can topple them. The fourth turning point strikes like a stormfront over Minas Tirith. The beacons have been lit. Rohan rides. The Witch King comes. The siege begins. The city stands on the edge of ruin, and the viewer thinks, perhaps, that the blue wizards will appear as saviors at the last possible moment. They do appear, not as saviors, as a second army entering the same battlefield with its own agenda. They arrive 3 nights into the siege, when the outer wall burns, and the cries of the wounded echo through stone corridors. Gondorian scouts report movement on the eastern road, an army that does not bear the red eye. Denethor refuses to believe it. He thinks it a trick. He sends archers to the walls with orders that make even veterans swallow hard. Loose at any banner. Not ours, he commands. "Loose at any tongue not ours." Faramir, pale from his wound, tries to rise from his bed. "Father," Denethor turns on him. "Be silent. Your weakness has already cost me one son." The words cut deeper than any blade. Outside, the eastern host approaches. At their front ride, LOTR and Pelennor, cloaked, staffs in hand. Between them walks Cirith, her spear held upright, her eyes scanning the walls of the great city she has heard of only in curses and songs. She expected grandeur. She did not expect fear. The gates open, not in welcome, but because the city has been shattered and cannot close itself anymore. The Eastern Army marches in, not rushing, not pillaging, disciplined as a knife's edge. Gondorians on the streets back away, hands on sword hilts, eyes wide. Children cry. Women clutch door frames. Old men spit. A Gondorian captain steps forward, blade drawn. "State your allegiance." Cirith answers before the wizards can. "To the breaking of Sauron. And after." The captain snaps. Cirith's smile is thin. "To the east." The captain raises his sword. The moment teeters. LOTR lifts a hand. Blue flame flickers, not threatening, but warning. No blood between us. Not now. Above, on the walls, Denethor watches. His face contorts with disgust and terror. He sees two cloaked figures who move like old stories. He sees an army entering his city while his own people bleed. He whispers, "This is how Gondor ends, not with the eye, with strangers." In the streets, Gandalf arrives, staff in hand, grey cloak whipping in the wind. He stops before LOTR and Pelennor. For a long moment, the battle noises fade as if the world leans in. Gandalf's voice is rough. "So you return." Pelennor's hood tilts. "So you still stand." LOTR steps closer. The air between them hums faintly, like a storm gathering. Gandalf's eyes search their hidden faces. "What have you done in the east?" "What you would not," LOTR replies. "We have made war." Gandalf's grip tightens on his staff. War leaves scars that do not heal. Pelennor's voice is soft. So does delay. A scream cuts through the moment. The Witch King's forces are pushing again. The Pelennor is a sea of fire and death. There is no time for old quarrels. Yet the quarrel does not vanish. It simply waits, like a blade sheathed for later. The battle of the Pelennor unfolds with a new axis. Rohan still arrives with thunder. Theoden still rides, golden hair streaming, and his laughter still breaks the spell of fear for a heartbeat. But now, as the Rohirrim slam into Orc ranks, the eastern host moves too. Not to aid Rohan directly, but to cut off Mordor's supply wagons and siege engines. Their tactics are precise, cruelly effective. They set fire to oil stores. They break the backs of Mumakil with volleys of heavy arrows aimed at eyes and joints. Mer sees them and feels anger rise. More foreigners, he spits, even as they kill his enemies. Rohirric rider beside him mutters, "Are they ours?" "They are no one's," Eomer growls. That is worse. On the field, Cirith leads her spears against a line of orcs dragging prisoners. She sees Gondorian civilians bound, faces grey with ash. For a moment, something in her chest tightens. These are the people her elders cursed. Yet their fear looks like her own, people's fear. She cuts the bonds of a young Gondorian girl. The child stares up at her, trembling. Cirith says, awkwardly, in broken Westron, "Run." The girl does not move. Her eyes flick to Cirith's armor, her foreign face, her spear dripping black blood. Cirith's jaw clenches. She grabs the girl by the shoulder and shoves her toward the city. "Run!" she repeats, louder. The girl runs, a small act, almost lost in the chaos, but it plants something dangerous. the possibility that enemies of culture can become allies of necessity. Then the Witch King descends on Theoden as before. The old king falls. Eowyn stands, shield raised, voice steady. I am no man. Her blade strikes true. The Witch King is undone. In the original tale, this is one of the emotional peaks. Here it is, followed by another shock. As the Witch King's shadow collapses, a wave of darkness ripples outward. Not a physical blast, but a psychic one. Men clutch their heads. Horses scream. Some drop to their knees as if crushed by invisible hands. LOTR staggers. Pelennor's staff digs into the earth to keep him upright. Their cloaks whip as if a wind has risen only around them. Gandalf feels it like a lash. He turns, eyes narrowing. The Nazgul's fall has snapped something. Across the battlefield, a figure stands. Camul returned, but changed. His hood is torn. His form flickers again, unstable, as if the blue wizard's earlier strike has weakened his binding permanently. He raises a hand, and a scream like winter splits the air. He is not targeting Gondor. He is targeting the blue wizards. Sauron has sent him not to kill men, but to kill the idea that men can be freed. Camul surges towards LOTR and Pelennor, a spear of terror. Eastern soldiers falter, their discipline cracking as ancient fear grips their bones. Cirith feels it too, an instinctive inherited terror of the Nazgul. She almost drops her spear. Then she remembers LOTR's oath by the flame imperishable. She remembers the promise, no kneeling. She roars, more to herself than anyone, and plants her spear butt into the mud. "Hold!" she shouts, echoing the word that will later freeze Minas Tirith's panic. Her company steadies around her. 500 spears point toward a shadow that should not be fightable. LOTR lifts both hands. Blue fire blossoms, not bright like lightning, but deep like ocean depths. Pelennor chants under his breath in a tongue older than Westron, words that taste like salt and ash. Camul hits their spell like a wave hitting rock. For a moment, the battlefield's center becomes something else entirely. Not a war of men, but a clash of powers hidden behind history. Gandalf watches, jaw clenched. He can intervene. He can add his strength. But he hesitates, because he does not know what the blue wizards will do if he binds himself to their working. He does not know the cost. Aragorn, far off, sees the blue flame and feels a chill of awe. He whispers, "So this is what they have been doing." A microshock. Pelennor falls to one knee, not wounded by blade, but bleeding from the nose, as if his body cannot contain the power he is channeling. LOTR's cloak catches fire with blue flame, and yet it doesn't burn. Then Camul screams again, this time not in triumph, but in agony. His form flickers wildly. The binding cracks. For one heartbeat, he is a man again. He falls to the mud, hands clutching his head. He looks up at LOTR and Pelennor with eyes full of begging. "End it," he whispers. "Please." LOTR's face remains hidden, but his voice trembles. "There was a time you would have asked forgiveness." Camul's mouth twists. There is no time, only pain. Pelennor reaches out, hand shaking, and touches Camul's brow. Blue light floods. Camul's scream cuts off like a severed rope. He collapses, dead, not returning to shadow, not flying away, dead like a man. A Nazgul has been truly slain. Across Mordor, Sauron feels the loss like a tooth ripped from bone. The eye blazes, and for the first time anger becomes fear. Because if one can be unmade, then all can. The battlefield cheers without understanding what has occurred. Men only know that a great cold has lifted for a breath, but Gandalf understands. He feels the balance shift. He also feels, very faintly, a new danger. If the blue wizards can unmake a Nazgul, what else can they unmake? What boundaries will they respect? The fifth turning point comes with Aragorn's arrival and Denethor's collapse, but it bends differently here. Aragorn still comes with the Grey Company and the dead, still unfurls the banner, still turns the tide at the river. Yet when the Corsairs' ships arrive, they do not come unopposed. The Blue Wizards anticipated the southern threat as well. An eastern detachment under Cirith has already struck the Corsair supply lines along the coasts of Harondor days earlier, guided by Pelennor's foresight. The Corsairs arrive ragged, their arrogance cut down to survival. When Aragorn leaps onto the dock at Harlond, he sees Eastern soldiers fighting alongside Gondorians, awkward, tense, effective. He feels the political earthquake beneath the victory. A Gondorian lieutenant spits after watching an Easterling save one of his men. We will regret this. Aragorn does not answer. He cannot afford regret. Not yet. Inside Minas Tirith, Denethor breaks as before, but now his madness has a sharper edge. He does not only despair at Sauron, he despairs at a future where Gondor survives and still loses itself. He confronts Gandalf in the Steward's Hall, eyes wild. "You bring me kings and ghosts and now Eastern conquerors," Denethor snarls. "You think you can balance them like stones on a wall. The wall will fall." Gandalf's voice is stern. "The wall is falling now. Will you help hold it, or will you light it on fire?" Denethor's laugh is a sob. It is already on fire. He looks past Gandalf toward the window where the eastern banners can be seen among the smoke. They will take what is left. They will call it justice. Faramir, weak but conscious, reaches out. "Father, please." Denethor's gaze softens for a heartbeat, and that softness is more heartbreaking than rage. "I loved you," he whispers, and then his face hardens again as if love itself is an enemy. "And you will live to see this city kneel." He flees to the pyre. Gandalf races as always. He arrives, staff raised, shadow of grief in his eyes. But in this timeline, as Denethor tries to light the fire, a figure appears in the doorway. Pelennor, cloak wet with rain that is not falling. Denethor freezes, torch in hand. Pelennor speaks, voice carrying the weight of distant deserts. "Do not do it." Denethor's eyes narrow. "Who are you to command the steward of Gondor?" Pelennor steps closer. "A stranger," he admits. "And yet not stranger than the shadow that has been whispering in your seeing stone." Denethor's hand trembles. The torch wavers. Pelennor's voice lowers. "Sauron has been feeding you despair like wine. You have been drinking it for years." Denethor snarls. "Lies." Pelennor lifts his hand, palm open. Blue light glows faintly, not aggressive, but revealing. The palantir hidden under Denethor's cloth hums as if in pain. Denethor stares at it like a beloved traitor. Pelennor says almost gently, "Let it go." For a heartbeat, it seems Denethor might. He might drop the torch. He might step away. He might live. Then Denethor's pride, Gondor's pride, rears like a wounded beast. He screams, "You will not strip me in my own house," and hurls the torch. The fire catches. Pelennor lunges, too late. Gandalf shouts. Guards rush. Chaos. Denethor dies as in the original tale. Yet Pelennor carries a new scar. He failed to save a man from despair. And he knows despair is what Sauron sells best. Outside, the war moves toward the Black Gate. The West prepares its last gamble, a march to distract Sauron from Frodo. Here, the gamble becomes a negotiation. In the Great Hall, after the Pellennor's smoke clears, Aragorn convenes his captains. Eomer stands, grim. Imrahil stands, weary. Gandalf stands, quiet. And now LOTR and Pelennor stand too, their cloaks still damp with battle mist. The air is thick with unspoken threats. Aragorn speaks first, voice even. We march on the Morannon. LOTR's hood tilts. Yes. Eomer's eyes flash. And your army? Will it march too? Cirith stands behind LOTR, arms crossed. We will march where it benefits us. Eomer's hand goes to his sword. Then you will march nowhere. Gandalf lifts his staff slightly, not threatening, but insisting on calm. This is not the hour for pride. Cirith laughs once. Pride? You call it pride when the East refuses to die for the West without promise. Aragorn steps forward, and the room quiets. There is something in him now, kingship-grown teeth. What promise do you seek? Aragorn asks. Cirith meets his gaze. That when Sauron falls, the West will not replace him. That your kings will not send governors eastward. That your merchants will not bind us with debt. That your priests will not call our gods devils and burn our shrines. Silence. The viewer feels the moral complexity tighten like a knot. The West has always been good in the story. Now it must face its own potential for domination. Imrahil speaks, careful. You speak as if Gondor has ever ruled you. Cirith's eyes harden. Your maps do. A sharp line. Aragorn exhales slowly. Then he says something that will reshape Middle-earth more than any battle. It will not swear that the West will be just, he says. Justice is not a thing sworn once and kept forever. It is a thing chosen again and again. Cirith's expression does not soften. Aragorn continues. But I will swear this. No king of mine will claim dominion over lands that do not freely accept it. Not by sword, not by hunger, not by fear. If the East chooses alliance, it will be alliance. If it chooses distance, it will be distance. Eomer looks at Aragorn sharply. You would let them go after all this? Aragorn's voice is low. If we do not, we will become the thing we fought. LOTR's voice enters, quiet but carrying. Words are light. Men need weight. Aragorn steps closer to LOTR until they stand almost chest to chest. Then take weight, Aragorn says. He draws Anduril and lays it flat across his palms like an offering. If I break this oath, he says, may this sword break in my hand. A gasp ripples. Even Gandalf's eyes widen slightly. LOTR does not move for a long moment. Then he reaches out and touches the blade with 2 fingers. Blue light flickers along the steel, not changing it, but marking it with something like memory. Then march, LOTR says. The coalition is sealed, not by trust, but by mutual fear of what happens if they fail. Now the story splits into its final braids. Frodo and Sam nearing Mount Doom, the host of the West, marching to the Morannon, and in Mordor, Sauron turning his attention like a spotlight, trying to decide which threat is real. Frodo and Sam's path grows harder here, because Mordor is not merely watching the West. It is watching the East too. Orc patrols thicken. The land feels more alive with malice, as if Sauron is squeezing Mordor into a fist. At the same time, something strange happens on the slopes of Orodruin. As Frodo climbs, exhausted, he sees, through heat haze and tears, a flicker of blue light in the ash clouds. For a moment, it looks like a star fallen too low. He stops, trembling. Sam, frantic, says, Mr. Frodo, you have to keep going. Frodo whispers, barely audible. There are others fighting. Sam's face twists. Everyone is fighting. Frodo nods. No. Others. Far away. The world is wider than we knew. It is a small line, but it carries weight. The quest of the ring is no longer only a story of West versus Shadow. It is a story of whether the world can unite without one side owning the other. At the Morannon, the host of the West arrives. It is larger now, swollen by Eastern companies, horse archers, spear phalanxes, engineers who build fieldworks fast as ants. Their presence changes the tone. The mouth of Sauron emerges and laughs not only at the West, but at the East marching beside it. He looks at LOTR and Pelennor and calls out, voice slick with contempt, "Ah, the lost ones return. Did you bring your little pets? Did you teach them new prayers?" Pelennor's staff thumps once on the ground. The mouth's smile falters for half a heartbeat, as if he feels something cold behind his eyes. Aragorn steps forward, and the parley unfolds. The mouth shows Frodo's mithril shirt, Sam's sword, the tokens of despair. In this timeline, when despair tries to land, it meets something unexpected. Eastern soldiers who have lived with despair for generations and learned to spit in its face. Cirith stands among them, jaw clenched, eyes burning. She murmurs in her own tongue words that translate roughly to, "He shows trinkets, we show teeth." When Aragorn rejects the terms, the mouth withdraws and the black gate opens. The final battle begins. It is chaos. The field becomes a grinder. The West fights, the East fights, orcs surge, trolls smash. The sky turns the color of bruises. Then a microshock. An Eastern chieftain turns, not out of cowardice, but because Sauron's promises have always been seductive. He shouts to his men that the West will betray them, that now is the moment to take Gondor while its strength is here. A wedge of Eastern soldiers breaks formation, aiming not at orcs, but at Gondorian lines. The coalition teeters on the edge of collapse at the worst possible time. Aragorn sees it, and his heart drops. Eomer roars, riding to intercept. Furious, Cirith sees it too. Her face goes cold. This betrayal is not just tactical. It is the very nightmare Denethor feared, the justification for every prejudice. She runs, weaving through bodies, shouting in her tongue, trying to stop them. They ignore her. LOTR watches, and something in him hardens. He raises his hand, blue flame coiling. Gandalf sees it and realizes what LOTR is about to do. He is about to use power not against Sauron's monsters, but against men, his own coalition, because control is easier than persuasion. Gandalf moves fast, stepping into LOTR's path. "No," Gandalf says, voice like a hammer. LOTR's hood turns. "If they break, we all die." Gandalf's eyes blaze. "If you make slaves of them to prevent betrayal, then Sauron has already won through you." For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath even amid battle. Pelennor, bleeding from a cut on his brow, steps between them. He looks at LOTR, and there is an exhaustion in him like the exhaustion of the sea. "Let them choose," Pelennor says. "If choice kills us, then we die clean." LOTR's hand trembles. Blue flame flickers, hungry. Then Cirith reaches the traitors. She grabs the chieftain by the throat and slams him against a rock. "You will not," she snarls in their tongue. "You will not turn our freedom into another chain." The chieftain laughs in her face. "Freedom? You kneel to blue ghosts now." Cirith's eyes flash. "I kneel to no one." She drives her spear through his foot, pinning him. He screams. Her men hesitate, shocked not by violence, but by what it represents. Accountability from within, not imposed from outside. Cirith turns to them, breathing hard. "If you betray now, you will prove the West right. If you hold now, you will prove yourself." A silence in their faces, a war within their eyes. Then, slowly, They turn back towards the Black Gate. They rejoin the fight. Gandalf exhales, relief sharp as pain. He looks at Alatar, and Alatar lowers his hand, the blue flame dying. The moral line holds, barely. And while armies clash, Frodo reaches the crack of doom. He stands at the edge, ring heavy as a world. The fire roars below like the voice of creation itself. Sam pleads. Frodo trembles. Then, as in the original, Frodo breaks. "I will not do this," he says, and his voice is both child and ancient king. "The ring is mine." The moment lands like a stone dropped into still water. All the wars outside are suddenly meaningless if this fails. Gollum attacks, bites, falls, and the ring goes into fire. Sauron's power collapses. The eye wavers, flares, and is gone. On the field before the Morannon, orcs falter. Some drop their weapons, others flee. Trolls roar in confusion. The ground shudders as Barad-dûr begins to fall in the distance, a tower collapsing like a slow-motion scream. Men cheer, men weep, men collapse. For a moment, it seems the world has been saved. Then the sixth turning point arrives, quieter than a battle and more dangerous. As Sauron falls, a vacuum opens, political, spiritual, cultural. The East has marched, bled, and won a claim to the future. The West has survived, but is exhausted. Borders that were once theoretical now matter. In the days after, as Mordor's dust settles, Aragorn is crowned. The city rejoices with a joy that feels like sunlight after years underground. But not everyone rejoices. In a tent outside Minas Tirith, Alatar and Pallando meet with Aragorn and Gandalf. Maps are spread. The air smells of ink and tired sweat. Aragorn says, "We must rebuild. We must send food to Ithilien. We must clear Mordor's borders." Alatar's hood tilts. And the East? Aragorn meets his gaze. The East must rebuild too. Alatar's voice is calm. Words again. Gandalf watches, silent, weighing. Cirith stands near the tent flap, arms folded. She listens like someone who has learned that victory is when knives come out in daylight. Aragorn says, "I will honor my oath. There will be no conquest eastward." Alatar says, "Then you will also honor this, that eastern lands will have the right to close their gates, that Gondor will not demand tribute, that Rohan will not ride in peacekeeping." Yoma, present and grim, bristles. "We have not ridden east since..." Pallando interrupts softly. "Since you could." Silence. Gandalf finally speaks. "What do you want?" Pallando turns his hood toward him. "To leave." The answer is not what anyone expects. Alatar continues. "We did not come to sit in councils of the West. We came to break Sauron's chains in the East. That work is not done because Barad-dûr fell. The East is full of lesser tyrants who learned from him. Cults, warlords, those who will claim to be his heir. Aragorn's eyes narrow. And you will lead armies there." "Yes," Alatar says simply, "until the East can stand without us." Gandalf's voice is quiet. "And can it?" A pause. Pallando's answer is honest enough to hurt. Not yet. This is the New World Order, the West crowned, the shadow broken, and two Istari turning away from the West songs to continue a harder war where no one will write poems. The epilogues begin to unfold like slow music. Faramir becomes steward and then Prince of Ithilien. He walks among ruins and living green. He plants trees with his own hands. He listens to refugees from the south and east who come seeking land and peace. He tries to build a Gondor that does not reflexively hate what it does not understand. One day, a woman arrives at Ithilien's border with a small group of eastern families. She is older, hair threaded with grey. It is Cirith. Faramir meets her at the gate. He studies her, wary but open. She bows her head slightly. We need a place to rest. We do not seek to take, only to breathe. Faramir nods, then breathe. It is a small mercy. It will echo for generations. Ymer returns to Rohan and rebuilds. He tells stories of Theoden's courage, of Eowyn's defiance, of the day when foreign spears held beside Rohirrim lances. He does not love the memory, but he respects it. And respect is the seed of peace, if it is watered. In the Shire, hobbits hear rumours that 2 blue sorcerers marched through Minas Tirith with armies, and they laugh as if it is a tavern tale. Their world remains small. That is its gift. Yet even the Shire feels the aftershock in subtle ways. Traders arrive from farther than before, selling fabrics dyed in blue pigments that do not fade. Children grow up hearing strange songs, and some feel a restless curiosity stirring, an itch toward horizons. Aragorn rules as Elessar, and he keeps his oath. He refuses calls from certain Gondorian lords who want security in the east. He forbids punitive expeditions. He sends envoys instead, soft words where hard hands would be easier. Not all of Gondor agrees. Some resent him for it. Some call him weak. Aragorn accepts the resentment as part of kingship. He knows the temptation to rule by fear never dies. It only changes its cloak. Gandalf, meanwhile, watches LOTR and Pelennor from a distance. He meets them once more at the crossroads where the great road runs east. The air is crisp. The sky is startlingly blue, as if the world has been washed clean. LOTR stands with his staff, and for once his hood is lowered. His face is weathered, eyes bright with stormlight. Pellennor's face remains half in shadow, calm as deep water. Gandalf looks older than ever, and yet lighter, as if the weight he carried has shifted into a new shape. "You will go back," Gandalf says. LOTR nods. "We must." Gandalf's voice tightens. "Do not become what you fought." LOTR's smile is weary. "Do not pretend you have never been tempted." Gandalf's eyes flash. "I refused the ring, and we refused the West," Pelennor says softly. "Each refusal has its cost." Gandalf studies them, and in his gaze is both admiration and fear. "Will you return again?" Pellennor's eyes lift to the horizon. "If the world needs us." Gandalf's voice drops. "And if the world does not want you?" LOTR's expression hardens. "Then the world will learn to want what it needs." Gandalf flinches, as if struck. He hears the edge in that sentence, the edge that can become tyranny dressed as necessity. He says quietly, "That is a dangerous thought." LOTR steps closer, lowering his voice so even the wind seems to listen. So is leaving the East to burn because the West prefers clean stories. Gandalf has no answer, not one that is entirely true. They part. The Blue Wizards march east with what remains of their armies, not triumphantly, not with songs, with grim purpose. Their banners ripple in the morning light, and the road swallows them. Years pass. Middle-earth heals in the west. In the east, healing looks like war. Reports come in fragments, temples of Sauron torn down, warlords toppled, slave markets burned. Some reports speak of miracles, blue rain falling on dead fields, crops rising where there was only dust. Other reports speak of harsh justice, cities starved into surrender, cultists executed, rebellions crushed. The West argues about it in halls with warm fires. Faramir reads these reports late at night, brow furrowed. Eowyn hears them and wonders whether freedom always tastes like blood. Aragorn listens and remains silent, because kings know that speaking too much can become a form of control. Then, One winter, an envoy arrives in Minas Tirith from the east. He is thin, face scarred, eyes haunted. He kneels before Aragorn and offers a sealed scroll. The seal is blue wax. Aragorn breaks it. The parchment smells faintly of smoke and rain. Gandalf stands beside him, and for the first time in years, the old wizard looks afraid. Aragorn reads. His face tightens. Eomer, present, leans forward. What is it? Aragorn's voice is low. A request. Gandalf's eyes narrow. From whom? Aragorn hesitates. Then carefully he says, From LOTR. The room stills. Aragorn continues. He asks for aid, grain, healers, and something else. What? Eomer demands. Aragorn's eyes lift, and the weight in them is heavy as stone. He asks for recognition. He says the East has formed a new confederation under a single law to prevent the rise of another Dark Lord. He asks the West to acknowledge it, to sign treaties, to bind ourselves to it. Gandalf's voice is a whisper, to bind ourselves to a power forged in war. Aragorn folds the letter slowly, or to refuse and risk making an enemy of what we helped create. The final question is planted. Did the Blue Wizards save the world? Only to build a new empire. Days later, Aragorn climbs alone to the high parapet of Minas Tirith. The wind is cold. The stars are sharp. Far to the east, beyond sight, lies a land that most of Gondor still thinks of as a source of enemies. He hears footsteps behind him. Gandalf approaches, staff tapping stone. You will decide, Gandalf says. Aragorn does not look away from the stars. I will. Gandalf's voice is quiet. What do you see when you look east? Aragorn's answer comes slowly. I see men, not monsters. Men who have been used, men who have learned to use others. I see a chance for peace that will not come without risk. Gandalf nods, and for a moment he looks very tired. Peace is always risky. It asks for trust, and trust is a blade that cuts both hands. Aragorn's jaw tightens, and if LOTR has become something else? Gandalf's gaze lifts to the stars. Then you will face not Sauron's tyranny, but a tyranny that believes itself righteous. Those are harder to fight. Aragorn closes his eyes briefly. The weight of kingship settles on him like armor. He says, then perhaps the only answer is to keep choosing. Again and again. Gandalf's mouth softens. Yes, but his eyes remain troubled, because he remembers LOTR's voice at the crossroads. The world will learn to want what it needs, and Gandalf knows, as any wise being knows, that need can be manipulated until it becomes a leash. The final image comes years later, far from Minas Tirith, far from the Shire, far from the songs. In the east, under a sky the color of bruised steel, a fortress rises on a hill that once held a temple to Sauron. Its stones are new, clean, carved with symbols meant to ward off darkness. At its highest tower burns a lantern with blue flame, steady in the wind. Below, in the courtyard, children train with wooden spears. They laugh. They stumble. They learn discipline early because their parents remember what chaos costs. On the tower balcony stands LOTR, cloak snapping. His face is older now, eyes sharper. Beside him stands Pelennor, quieter, watching the horizon as if listening to something only he can hear. A messenger climbs the stairs and kneels, offering a report. LOTR reads it without expression. Then he looks out across the eastern plains, vast, beautiful, scarred. Pelennor asks softly, "Do you think we have done enough?" LOTR's hand tightens on the parchment. Enough is a word for men who can rest. Far below, the blue lantern burns, and its light stretches over the training yard like a promise, or like a warning. And in the distance, beyond the last line of sight, Another drumbeat begins, faint, unfamiliar, answering the blue flame in the dark.